So this is also another case, advanced case of pericarditis. This advanced case of pericarditis. The animal is, they're taking back the animal just for documentation. I asked to bring them out again in the slope. So it's, you can able to see the jugular vein engorgement. The brisket edema is there. It's advanced stage of pericarditis. The animal will walk down very casually. So slope tests are not a relevant test, that we have to take in mind. The only the clinical examination is venous stasis positive. You have to verify whether it is positive or not. See, the jugular vein is very prominent. Brisket edema is prominent. So jugular vein is positive venous stasis, brisket edema, auscultation of heart. These are all the clinical signs. Once you come across this thing, you can clearly 100% you can say it is a case of pericarditis. So don't rely on slope test. Okay, that's all regarding the pericarditis. So I hope you got the clarification in the pericarditis case. And the next case, sometimes the farmers, they used to tell the history. The animal is having epistaxis. Suddenly the animal got bleeding from the nostrils. So we cannot come to a conclusion, anything, what happened, suddenly it caused epistaxis, maybe unilateral or bilateral. So the differential diagnosis includes, first differential diagnosis includes snake bite. Snake envenomation is there. Okay. So you have to think about snake bite in large animals. See, profused. Here, the epistaxis will be profused in nature. So bleeding from the nostrils will be there. All others, there won't be any swelling. Sometimes the animal may be having facial edema, or sometimes the limb edema. The animal may got bite from the limbs. Mostly during grazing, they will get the bite, snake bite. They will get the bite in the nostrils or the commissures, oral commissures or the limbs, so that we can see the obvious swelling. Sometimes there won't be any swelling, only epistaxis alone will be there. So the differential diagnosis you have to include snake bite is the first differential diagnosis, and the profuse bleeding like this will be there. The second differential diagnosis include caudal vena cava thrombosis. That I will tell you. Caudal vena cava thrombosis means that thrombosis occurs in the caudal vena cava area. That means when the cow is fed with the chronic carbohydrate, more amount of carbohydrate, and it is having chronic lactic acidosis, the thrombi will form. So in vena cava, thrombus will be formed, and suddenly the animal will fall down. It won't be like this. Suddenly the animal will fall down with the epistaxis and it will die. That you have to think about caudal vena cava thrombosis. But here in this case, snake bite, the animal will be there for 1 or 2 days. Still the animal will be going on. The epistaxis will be there. So how to identify whether it is having snake bite or not? There are 2 types of snakes are present. One is hemotoxic and another thing is neurotoxic. Russell's viper, Sawscale viper, are hemotoxic, and cobra and krait, and they are all neurotoxic. In neurotoxic, you won't get epistaxis. Only in hemotoxic snake bite you will be getting, that is viper bite, you will be getting epistaxis. So for that you have to do the one small field test is there, that is called 20 minutes whole blood clotting time. Very simple. Just take a 2 ml syringe or 5 ml syringe. Take 1 ml of blood from the jugular vein, just 1 ml of blood, and put the plunger and keep it undisturbed for 20 minutes and tilt it after 20 minutes like this. If it is not clotted after 20 minutes, that is clear case of viper bite, viper envenomation. Okay. So just take 1 ml of blood and pull out the plunger and keep it undisturbed. And after 20 minutes, just tilt it like this. If it is not clotted like this after 20 minutes, it is a clear case of viper envenomation. So Sawscale viper or Russell's viper, whatever may be. So in such cases, when you go on giving that means hemostats like adenochrome, semicarbazine, or streptochrome, or texablit, or tranexamic acid, no result will be there. So just to give snake venom anti-serum is available in the market, whichever it is useful. It is the same for dog and human, everyone, the same thing. 2 things are available. One is the powder form, another is the liquid form. If it is a powder form, there is a water for injection is there. You have to reconstitute and you can take it. Another one preparation is there. It is in the liquid form itself. You have to you can take 2 vials and mix it with the normal saline and give IV. Don't give direct IV. Okay, so that may sometimes lead to anaphylactic reactions. Don't give direct IV. Mix it with normal saline and give IV. The normal protocol, just in large animal, because of a very big body surface, we need less dosage. In small animal like dogs, we need more dose because of the body surface. Dog and all having small body surface, they require more anti-serum. Here very big surface, so we give 1 or 2 treatment is more than sufficient. We come across just used to give 2 treatment, 1 or 2 treatment. All the animals will become normal and they will discharge. They will be discharged very effectively. So you first you mix two vials in normal saline and give IV, and after 8 hours and see again the clotting time. If it is not clotted, you repeat the treatment. So like that you have to repeat the treatment after 8 hours of every 8 hours interval. And if it is clotted, suppose the first dose you are giving in the morning, or to evening you are seeing, or next day morning you are seeing the same case, you are seeing the clotting time, it is clotted, so there is no need of giving snake venom antiserum. If it is not clotted, then you have to go for again the treatment. You have to repeat the treatment. Okay, so this is how we have to differentiate. Suppose when the animal is having epistaxis, the blood is clotted within 5 minutes, that indicates it is not a case of snake bite. So you think about the other causes. What, as already told, caudal vena cava thrombosis. In whenever the animal is having any lesions, there will be secretions like this. See, in the previous picture, you can see profuse bleeding from here. Nostrils, profuse bleeding is there. Here, the animal is having serosanguinous nasal discharge. Can you able to see? You can, those who are seeing in the mobile, you can zoom it and see the nostril, left nostril. You can able to appreciate the serosanguinous discharge from the nostrils. Any other clinical signs you can appreciate in this animal? The farmer will be telling the history. The farmer will be telling the history. This type of epistaxis, I mean, discharge is coming intermittently then and there. So you will be asking how long? It is for months, or you will be telling it is for a few weeks or months, 2 or 3 months. It is coming like that and it is becoming normal. So they used to tell like this: mild serosanguinous discharge from the nostrils. And you can appreciate the other clinical signs. See the eyes. You can able to see the eye. It is obvious. Protrusion of the eyeball is very prominent. That is exophthalmos. The eyeball is protruded outside in this side. In this side alone, you are getting this serosanguinous discharge. In the right side, it is not that. Only this left side it is there. This indicates it is a case of presence of some lesions in the nasal cavity. Mostly you come across ethmoid tumor. Sinus tumor is common. You have to suspect sinus tumor, ethmoid tumor in such a type of cases. Diagnosis is very easy. Okay. So confirmation only by nasal washing. You can give some 50 ml of normal saline with a small catheter, like you cut the butterfly needle or IV set, and you make it as a small catheter, and you can inject some 50 ml of normal saline through the nostril, and you can collect that fluid, and you can send it for the laboratory for rule out any tumor cells are present. That is called nasal washing can be taken. Otherwise, just by seeing, appreciating the clinical signs and seeing the nasal patency, you can be able to come to a conclusion it is a case of sinus tumor. So whenever the institutions, they have the endoscopy, they used to see through the endoscopy. But in field conditions, just by this history and the exophthalmos, we can come to a conclusion it is a case of sinus tumor or ethmoid tumor, and no treatment is fruitful for this condition. So it's a case of ethmoid tumor. See, the eyes are prominent, protruded outside. So to differentiate, you can see the periocular area, all these muscles are engorged. The periocular muscle, you cannot able to differentiate the eyeball. See, it is protruded outside. This is called exophthalmos. Very easily you can appreciate. In this also you can able to easily appreciate the eyeball, protrusion of eyeball. So this is not a puffiness of the eyelid. Puffiness of the eyelid means the eyelid will be swelling will be there. That is in the allergic condition. Here the eyeball is protruded outside. So here also you can able to see the protrusion of the eyeball, exophthalmos. So you can take a small thin piece of cotton in the forceps and just keep it in the nostril, in front of the nostril, and observe for the flow of the air. The affected side, there won't be any flow of the air. So that indicates the nostril is completely blocked with the lesions of tumor lesion is there. So ethmoid tumor. Once you diagnose, you can very well tell the farmer regarding the prognosis. Okay. So that is regarding the discharge from the nostrils. So any discharge, mild discharge, serosanguinous discharge for chronic period, you have to think about ethmoid tumor or any other lesions in that. Another one case is the nasal schistosomiasis. That also epistaxis like bleeding will be there. Some mild bleeding may be there from the nostrils, but snoring sound will be there because of the presence of that lesions, snoring sound will be there. So that this is how we have to differentiate whether it is a ethmoid tumor or nasal schistosomiasis or snake envenomation. The snake envenomation, profuse bleeding will be there. See here, this is not exophthalmos. Here, as already told, the eyelid is swollen. So that we have to differentiate. Here, the eyelid is swollen. The perineal edema is there. Vulval lips are swollen. So this indicates allergy condition. So any allergy, either it may be a plant allergy or an insect bite, it leads to swelling in the perineum, swelling of the eyelids. So that is called allergy condition. The otherwise called angioedema, angioneurotic edema. Sometimes you may come across such a cases. Swelling of the vulva alone will be there, like pumpkin-like swelling alone of the vulva alone will be there. That is very common when the animal take for mimosine poisoning, mimosine indica, mimos herpetica. So that causes vulval edema and retention of the urine will be there. So that is called angioneurotic edema. Here it is swelling of the eyelids. That means some allergic condition. Either it may be a drug allergy or any other thing. See, the swelling of the perineum is very much obvious. So in such a cases, you give antihistamines. It will work well. So you give antihistamines and furosemide. And nowadays you can give antihistamine with ranitidine also can be combined. H1 and H2 can be given for very good results, and furosemide, and the symptom will be relieved immediately. For example, whenever you are giving some sulfa-trimethoprim or some other drugs, immediately the animal will get allergic reaction. When the animal is having systemic involvement, then you go for administration of adrenaline. You can administer. You can take 1 ml of adrenaline when the animal is having systemic involvement, 9 ml of normal saline, and then mix it. Then you got 1 in 10,000. In that you can give 1 ml per 45 kg body weight subcutaneous. Okay, that you can. So this is another case. So just you can appreciate the clinical signs. Very obvious. The animal is extended the head. See, obviously the animal is extending the head like this. So you have to appreciate the clinical signs first, this thing, and to correlate to the other thing. Suppose the animal is walking like this, extended neck with erected ears, and the animal is walking like a toy, unable to open the mouth. These are all the suggestive signs of tetanus. So you have to think about tetanus. When you press the neck, you cannot be able to press the neck. It will be very much stiff in nature. So that is tetanus. All other things are normal, opening the mouth, waving the ears, everything, but the animal is standing with the extended neck. As already told, extended neck is an indicator of some problem in the thoracic cavity. For example, in the lungs means aspiration pneumonia. In the heart means pericarditis. Reticulum, reticulitis. You have to see which is affected. Any pain in the thoracic cavity will lead to extended neck. So you auscultate the heart, you can able to appreciate the abnormal sounds or the exaggerated sounds. You can say it is a case of aspiration pneumonia. So naturally, the diagnosis will be very easy. When you auscultate the heart, you can able to appreciate the fluid splashing sound. It is pericarditis. So naturally, you will be seeing for venous stasis. So this is how we have to correlate. So extended neck indicative of any problem in the thoracic cavity. See here, this animal. What is the clinical signs you can able to appreciate here? So respiration, oral respiration is very much obvious. The animal is breathing, open mouth breathing is there, and the respiration is both thoraco-abdominal. So thoraco-abdominal respiration and the jerking respiration is there. This is a case of aspiration pneumonia. So we used to get many number of cases aspirated. The owner may drench some fluids orally. They will drench, faulty drenching will be there. And one of the most common cause of aspiration pneumonia in the field condition is giving the gel preparations. So whenever you are prescribing the gel preparations, so whenever the animal go for downer, they used to prescribe, everyone they used to prescribe, use some gel, calcium gel preparation. So the farmer, they will open the gel and put it in the mouth and they will squeeze it, and it will go inside directly into the trachea as if they are putting the body spray. It will go directly into the trachea and it will get aspirated. Once it is get aspirated with the gel preparations, it is very difficult to recover the animal. So whenever they are using the gel preparation, ask them to drench it in the, put it in the drinking water, unless otherwise they are putting in the proper manner. So in the literature, they would have clearly given, it should be given between the cheek and the mouth, not directly. So if they are not able to drench it properly, they have to give it, mix it with the water and give it. If they are keeping it directly in the mouth and squeezing the gel preparation directly, it will go into the lungs and get aspirated. So before prescribing the gel preparation, make ensure whether they are giving it properly or not and give proper instructions. And the recovery of the case depends upon the nature of the material which got aspirated. For example, if it is water means it will work well, then it will become normal. Suppose if we are aspirated with the liquid paraffin, oil, glycerin, gel preparations, then the prognosis will be variable. It's a guarded to poor, depending upon the individual cases. So in such a type of cases, don't go for fluid therapy. So whenever aspiration pneumonia or pneumonia is presented with that, don't go for fluid therapy. That will lead to pulmonary edema. The animal will succumb and the animal will die. So go for treatment with the ceftiofur sodium or streptopenicillin or enrofloxacin. So mild cases you can go for enrofloxacin, and moderate cases you can go for streptopenicillin. In severe cases you can go for ceftiofur sodium. 1 to 2 milligram per kg body weight can be given. And the flunixin is a must. Flunixin is a must, and the furosemide is also a must. So antibiotic, flunixin, furosemide, a combination of these three things for a course have to try, and then only we have to tell the prognosis. Once the animal, how you to assess the prognosis of this case? Whenever a aspiration pneumonia is treated, how you appreciate the prognosis? When the animal is waving the tail and moving the head like this, and the extended head becomes normal, you can say the animal is improving. And you can ask the owner whether the animal is drinking water and a continuous sip or not. So he may be telling the animal is not taking water, it is intermittently taking water. So sometimes it will dip inside and it will take some water and it will take the head outside, and after some time it will dip and it will, like that means till the condition is there. So once the animal start taking water in a single gulp, that indicates the animal recovered normally. Okay. So this is how you have to tell the prognosis to the farmer. And once the animal is not drinking water and a continuous a single strip means you have to think about any problem in the upper respiratory tract and the lower respiratory tract. So respiratory tract should be examined. Any obstruction is there or not, or any pneumonia or aspiration pneumonia is there, or clinically you have to examine and you can come to a conclusion. So by history itself, we can able to narrow down the diagnosis. So in aspiration pneumonia, antibiotic, flunixin, furosemide can be tried, and you should not go for fluid therapy. So in this case also, oral breathing is observed, and you continue the same treatment. Don't go for the fluids, and in such a cases, don't intubate the stomach tube. So for you want to evaluate the rumen liquor, so don't put the stomach tube in such a cases. When you put the stomach tube, the animal may go for asphyxia and death will happen. So take care in such a type of cases. And also transportation stress should be avoided. Whenever these animals are transported in a small vehicle to the hospital, during the movement, a jerking movement like this, during the travel, the animal may go for stress and collapse. It will get collapse. So you have to take care. Aspiration pneumonia, you have to take more care. In some combinations, during the course of treatment of aspiration pneumonia, some animals may exhibit symptoms like this. So when you palpate the dorsal aspect of the body or neck region or wherever it is, you can have the crepitation should be that is called spontaneous emphysema. So in such a type of cases, it's a complication of aspiration pneumonia. So you have to tell the prognosis. Other causes of spontaneous emphysema after the sequelae of ephemeral fever. So after the ephemeral fever, some animals they may get spontaneous emphysema like this. Aspiration pneumonia may get this type of spontaneous emphysema. Sudden falling down and rib fracture may lead to spontaneous emphysema. And foreign body syndrome, piercing of foreign body from the reticulum and it piercing the lungs also gets spontaneous emphysema. And faulty trocherization of the rumen, that also will lead to spontaneous emphysema. So depending upon the area, from which area, anterior to posterior or posterior to anterior, you have to see, then come to a conclusion and identify the etiological agent. So subcutaneous emphysema means you have to differentiate all these things. And the prognosis depends upon the individual cases. So this is a case of aspiration pneumonia treated, and after treatment, the animal is waving the tail, everything, but still panting is there. It is the recovery process. So you have to, so if it is waving the head here like this means it is in the improving stage. So you can tell the positive prognosis. In some cases, the next thing is, some cases you may be coming across the dung material like this. The owner may say the animal is passing watery dung. So you have to do the rectal examination and see when there is complete absence of dung and only water alone is present, you think about intestinal obstruction. Okay. Or sometimes when the animal is passing dung like this, like blood tinged, watery. Okay, tenesmus is there. This indicates a bacterial enteritis. This is very common in young ones and also in adult ruminants. Sometimes the animal may pass a dung like this. It is a case of bacterial enteritis, mostly salmonella. In Clostridium also you will get the dung material like this. When you do the rectal examination, no dung material is there. Only this mucus and blood tinge will be there. This is a case of bacterial enteritis. This is also a bacterial enteritis. Here, this type of dung, when you are coming across, you have to differentiate from amphistomes. In amphistomes, you may be getting a small bead-like structures will be there, and you have to come across, differentiate both bacterial and amphistomes. See, sometimes you may be coming across some materials like this pass from the rectum. This is due to catarrhal enteritis. So this is a catarrhal enteritis, and it is also a bacterial infection. Sometimes the owner may say the intestines came out like this. It's not the intestine, it is the intestinal cast. It's a fibrinous cast of the intestine. It's peeled off and come out, and it's sometimes you may be coming across these things. It's all intestine cast, not the intestine. It's the intestinal cast due to the inflammation, and it is due to the bacterial infection. Okay. It works well. It will respond to the antibiotics. So you can go for sulfa-trimethoprim. You can go for sulfa-trimethoprim. IV preparations are there. Many preparations are there. Sulfa-trimethoprim IV preparations. You can mix it with the normal saline. You can give intravenously. Within 1 or 2 days, you can get a very good result. You can go for orally ciprofloxacin with the tinidazole bolus morning 2 and evening 2. Apart from the parenteral administration of sulfa-trimethoprim. Within 2 or 3 days, the animal will become absolutely normal. Even enterofloxacin also may be effective in some cases. So whenever you are coming across a dung material like this, loose dung, passing the animal passing the dung like this, means you think about SARA, subacute ruminal acidosis. So you may be treating with the sulfa-trimethoprim antibiotics, the animal won't respond. So this is bacterial enteritis. This is different. So the animal is passing dung like this, means this is subacute ruminal acidosis. So here you have to give oral antacids, oral buffer solutions or buffer powders are there. Magnesium carbonate is there, and so many commercial preparations are available as antacids are there, that you can give like Rumibuff, Buffzone, so many things are there. So you can give orally, or you can give like magnesium carbonate 1 gram per kg body weight. So subacute ruminal acidosis, you give oral antacids orally, the animal will become normal, the dung will become normal. So instead of here, there is no need of any antibiotics or any other deworming drugs. Sometimes you may be getting dung material like this, undigested grain materials are noticed here. This is also SARA, subacute ruminal acidosis. Here also there is no need of antibiotics, just to give oral buffer powders or antacids with the supplementation of ESAC bolus. That means the probiotic bolus can be supplemented. And ask the owner to change the dietary management. Ask them to reduce the concentrate or split the concentrate feed and give more roughages, then it will become normal. So this is also undigested feed materials are noticed in the dung material. So this is the dung material which is having colon marking. Sometimes you may be getting like this, that indicates dehydration may be there, or foreign body syndrome, motility disorder. So undigested fiber like materials in the dung indicative of motility disorder. The animal is having some localized peritonitis or vagal dysfunction like that. Here also you can see the dung, you can able to see the undigested feed materials. So a lot of like fibrous materials are noticed in the dung, and it indicates a motility disorder. It indicates a motility disorder, and you have to think about some problem in the that is means TRP, traumatic reticuloperitonitis. That may be a localized or diffuse motility disorder. You have to rule out TRP. So just by seeing the dung material itself, you can say the animal is having. You can tentatively, you can go for the differential diagnosis. The animal is having traumatic reticuloperitonitis. Then go for the other clinical examination. Sometimes in buffalo, in practice, it's very common in buffaloes. In many of the practitioners in Maharashtra, they used to call and say this type of symptoms is noticed in buffalo. This already I told you, this catarrhal enteritis. It's a catarrhal enteritis, like a fibrous material will be coming. A cast-like material will be coming from the rectum, and like noodles, it will be hanging from the rectum. Okay, so it responds very well to sulfa-trimethoprim, as already discussed. You can give intravenously mixed with normal saline, or it will well respond to the enterofloxacin also. Within 1 or 2 days of treatment, it will recover very nicely. Sometimes you may be coming across the dung material like this. So this is also subacute ruminal acidosis. Semi-solid dung, frothy in nature, loose dung. Always think about subacute ruminal acidosis. So this is also subacute ruminal acidosis. So whenever you come across this type of diarrhea, first thing you go for antibiotic therapy. This type of diarrhea, there is no need of any antibiotic therapy. Just to give oral antacids. Room and buffer if we are maintaining. Ask the management, split the concentrates, give roughages, then it will become normal. This is subacute ruminal